Hey everybody, welcome to the Pixelblips podcast for whatever this is.
Whatever day this may be.
So we're going to try and do something new. Whenever we can't think of a obvious news story to cover or talk about, we're going to basically attack one another with
random topics.
a random topic.
And I know we said that we would do Gamescom stuff, but that's all been done to death, and we would just be rehashing stuff. And
it's at this point that you're watching this, it's two weeks out. At this point, maybe 3.
Yeah, it was like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. So we're not covering Gamescom. Sorry, if you want to know what happened, check out Kotaku, GameSpot, Giant Bomb, all that.
Check out the internet.
Yeah, look at the internet, and everybody will tell you what happened. So
okay, so you guys that are watching this, you obviously already know what the surprise topic is going to be, but Dave doesn't. Dave, the surprise topic this week, since we're getting into fall, and I always think of RPGs in the fall, is forgotten RPGs.
Forgotten RPGs?
Forgotten RPGs. So think about that. What I'm playing this week, I'm playing Akiba's Trip, which is awesome. I always like the really weird games. It's by Axis Software.
It's right here. He's got the Vita version.
I got the Vita version with the little. I bought it on the retail chip, which was surprisingly hard. I had to go call
3 different places.
GameStops. Because I always hate going to GameStop, but if you're getting a low print run game like that, it's pretty much your only option.
Yeah, because the Best Buy, Target, places like big box stores aren't going to have copies of especially not weirdish Japanese RPGs. They don't tend to have a lot of copies of those.
So it's not an RPG. It's more like a Yakuza style Final Fight type game where you strip people's clothes off.
Oh yeah. I remember reading an article about that, and people were enraged.
People were angry.
Of course, the internet, it doesn't take much to piss off the internet.
You do pull the clothes off men more often than you pull the clothes off women, especially from a story standpoint. Most of the people that attack you are men. And the storyline is they have vampires, and you have to pull their clothes off so that they dissolve in the sun.
Right.
So it's the whole game has this kind of aloof, stupid otaku mentality that is really funny. If you played Persona 4 and you find yourself really liking the Japanese-ness of it, the anime-ness of it, I would highly suggest Akiba Strip. It's kind of a lighter fare.
Yeah.
There's no little girl in this that asks you why bad people do bad things.
Because bad people do bad things because they're bad.
Well, that's not one of the response options in Persona 4.
Yeah, well,
So I've also been playing, and why I'm thinking of forgotten RPGs is USGamer.net has recently been doing a daily classics of non-famous RPGs, basically.
So it's things that aren't Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest.
There's a Final Fantasy and a Dragon Quest in there, but not the ones that you would immediately think of. Is basically
Crystal Chronicles.
No.
Oh.
Which is funny. We'll get to that when we talk about it.
Yeah.
It's one of my things. It's one of the
Anyway.
So the other thing I've been playing is Tales of Symphonia HD remaster.
And was
that very good?
Was that
very good?
PS3?
GameCube.
No. I understand it was a GameCube game originally, but you bought it on PS3.
Yeah, download.
And it's download only, or can you buy it retail?
You can buy it retail.
Okay, good.
So and
if you really want the disc, which I'm sure it's over here somewhere.
No. I have it's
bought
a
on the
digital
store?
copy.
Okay.
Yeah, because the 3 Tales, I should say 3, even though 2 of them I bought at the same time. The 3 Tales games I have for my PS3 are all digital.
Okay.
I don't think I have a Tales game retail copy. I might have Tales of the World Radiant Historian.
Well,
anyway.
wasn't there one for the? Was there one for the Dreamcast, or
There's
was that
one for the PSP?
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say
There was none for the Dreamcast. Super Nintendo.
I think I'm thinking
PlayStation.
I'm thinking of Skies of Arcadia. Never mind.
Yeah. No, I have that.
Yeah.
And
Anyway.
I'm really, once again, really loving Tales of Symphonia. I played it when it was on the GameCube, probably for about 40 hours. I remember getting pretty far through it. And when I bought it, I started playing it again, but I also bought Hyperdimension Neptunia Victory at the same time. I played that instead because I hadn't
played that game before. Yeah.
So I didn't have any idea of what it was or how it was going to go. And now that, I imagine I had it on my GameCube right after I graduated college.
That was
a while ago.
Yeah, that's you have slept a lot since then, and drank and other things.
Yes, so between here and there, I'm rediscovering Tales of Symphonia for the first time.
How much was that?
$10. It was $10 for Tales of Symphonia, and then also included in that sale was you got Tales of Symphonia: Dawn of the New World, which is the Wii sequel, which I haven't played.
Is it still $10 or is it
20?
I think it's now 20. It was on sale.
20 or 30.
I mean, there's a flash sale. Well,
it started at 40. I know it started.
And
at
then
40.
it has dropped significantly.
On the flash sale is Tales of Grace's F, which is the Tales game for the PS3 that kind of revitalized the Tales series in the United States. Because they had released Tales of Vesperia on the Xbox 360, it didn't sell well. They released Tales of the World on PSP, it didn't sell well. They had never been able to reclaim kind of the Tales of Symphonia, like even it hadn't sold really gangbusters, but they hadn't been able to like reclaim that. They had done Dawn of the New World, thinking that we'll bring this over, it'll be just as popular. It didn't sell well.
Yeah.
So Tales of Grace's F was kind of Namco saying, okay guys, if you don't buy this one, we're not doing it anymore, and it sold really well.
Yeah.
And then obviously Tales of Xillia, which is the latest one, and Tales of Xillia 2 just came out last weekend or the week before. They've sold gangbusters, so more Tales from here on out. So Dave, what have you been playing this week? As I like wipe a boogie.
Well, I mean, I haven't really been doing a lot. I tried out a new game, and it was my first 48 for the week. It's called Smite. It's a MOBA, but it's taken from a third-person perspective, like the third-person over-the-shoulder perspective versus like the isometric that you get with League of Legends on and Dota 2.
That's the one where they gave Kali, the many-armed Hindu goddess, giant boobs, right?
Yeah, well, that's like all the female characters almost. They're real top-heavy and not very well clothed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand why that's a problem. If we had Jesus like ripped, shirtless, with a chainsaw.
Yeah, it's funny.
Like, eating people. Like, yeah, it would be a problem.
They don't touch that.
Well, you want to know why?
Because the people would go batshit crazy.
Yes, because the Hindus can go batshit crazy because they're over in India. They're not here.
The majority of them are over here, and Greek and Roman, those religions aren't practiced, if at all, anymore. And Norse gods, nobody really.
Don't smite him, Zeus.
Yeah, it's funny. It's just I think it's funny that they didn't touch that. Like they only go to the ones that have like huge pantheons, which that makes a lot of sense to me. But it's fun. Like some of the guys I work with have been playing it, and they kind of got me. They were like, "Oh yeah, you should totally check it out." And I like during the downtimes at work, they play games, and it's fun. It's great working in a data center.
My new position, I haven't had downtime at my job.
Well, I don't have downtime. They do because whatever. Anyway. So I peeked over their shoulder, and I'm like, oh, okay, so that's cool. So it kind of mixes, like, a third-person shooter with a MOBA, and it's kind of fun. The guy I've been playing the most, like, I've only played, like, 5 or 6 games, but I've played a lot of Thor, and Thor's a lot of fun. He's what they would call, like, an assassin class, so he, like, sneaks up on people and like, stuns them and then does a ton of damage and then rolls to the next guy. So
interesting.
It's a lot of fun, though. It's
But not much game playing going on this week, is what you're saying.
Not really. I played Fez a lot more than I thought I was going to.
I lost an entire day to Fez last weekend.
I think
I'm just gonna try it.
In an afternoon,
8 hours later.
In like the 3 hours I've played of that game, I've gotten like 8 or 9 cubes.
Yeah.
While that's not a lot, and I think there's like
I've gotten 17.
Yeah, aren't there like 32 total?
Yeah.
But
there's way more than you need.
In order to like complete the game, you only need like 16.
Yeah.
So,
because I just kept I would get into one area and then I would just keep messing around with even the little annoying thing, the hey listen thing. Would be like, hey, go open the other door. Now that you have 8 cubes, I'd be like, no, there's still more stuff I need to do in here.
There's stuff
spinning the world around.
Yeah, and then you can, when you bring up the map, it also says, okay, you've completed all the crap in this little room. Yeah. And now you complete all the crap in this room, so you can kind of like do the completionist thing. And
it's funny that you played that this week, considering the whole Phil Fish debacle.
I don't care.
Well,
it was free on Plus, and I had played it a little bit.
The game's great. It's odd. It's an odd coincidence that there's also a news story floating around about Phil Fish.
Yeah, there's a news story floating about a lot of people doing a lot of things that.
So I actually, not happy about. I've noticed I've had to carve out time for video gaming. But like once I can carve out a chunk, like I can sit down and be like, this is the chunk of time for video gaming.
Yeah.
What I'm going to do for the next so many hours.
Yeah, my problem usually is I don't.
The Simpsons marathon is also getting in the way of a lot of parts of my life too.
Well, yeah, there's that. But then there's the whole aspect ratio that they like instead of just displaying a 4:3, they like crop the top and the bottom off so that.
Yeah, but they didn't. It's just like the Seinfeld episodes. They didn't just like blanket.
Crop the top and the bottom.
Like they actually cropped the top when they went in and color corrected it for the current era. They actually went in and cropped each scene, each camera shot,
individually.
Camera shot, air quote.
Yeah.
Individually, so that you're getting a 16 by, and it works fairly well.
But some people are complaining, and this is like not gaming related at all. But some people are complaining that you're missing out on some of the best jokes in the series, especially in the first Like, because they're like little side jokes on like the edges and things like that, and they weren't pertinent to whatever the storyline was, but they were still like overarching like little jokes.
Well, yeah, but if you want that experience, you can buy the DVDs.
You can buy the discs, or I think you can watch some of that stuff online in its original aspect. I don't know.
I'm curious to see what they do with Simpsons World, if it's going to be the original aspect or not. Simpsons World's the app coming out this fall.
Oh, where you can watch
Simpsons like a Netflix. Anyway, so Forgotten RPGs. Okay, so here's what I would say a Forgotten RPG is. A Forgotten RPG is an RPG that people don't immediately think of. It doesn't have to be more than 5 years old. So like we could talk about.
Oh no, the couple that I've come up with, at least the first iterations of them, are way more than. 5
Okay,
years.
so like Resonance of Fate, I think is a Forgotten RPG. It was made by Sega. It was actually made by Tri-Ace, published by Sega on the Xbox 360 and PS3.
Yeah.
It's really fun. It's an interesting battle system. Not perfect, of course, not a perfect game. The story's kind of meh.
Yeah.
But so the first one I want to talk about is actually funny because I actually went to my game shelf yesterday and I pulled it out and I put it in the Game Boy player. Final Fantasy Legend 3, which the last time I played Final Fantasy Legend 3, it was the second game I got for my Game Boy. I got Tetris with my Game Boy.
Yeah.
And then I got Final Fantasy Legend 3 from my grandmother.
Isn't that... Those are the ones that are like a Zelda game, right?
No, those are the ones that are Saga.
Okay, so that's Final Fantasy Saga?
No, Final Fantasy Legend 1, 2, and 3 is Saga 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
So then, of course, when the PS1 came around, we had Saga Frontier, Romancing Saga.
Oh, okay.
All those. But the funny thing is I put it in. My play clock was like 5 hours on it, and I was at level 2.
Mm-hmm.
But you can name your characters. My characters' names? Dave, Andy, and Brian.
Well, that's cool.
I was like, that's funny.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine.
I was like, that's kind of a
you
cool
can do that.
little...
You could do that with a lot of RPGs. You can name all the characters. Like,
well, yeah, but the fact that like I've never touched. The last time I probably touched that game file was probably 7th grade.
Yeah, you were like under 14 or something.
Yeah, definitely before high school. So it was very funny to see that pop up, and I was like, oh,
that's awesome. Hey, and good on the battery for not dying in a decade.
Way to go, battery.
40 years.
It also probably helped that I bought that. My grandma got that for me new. But I remember like opening that box up on Christmas morning. I had just gotten my Game Boy the night before, opening that on my Christmas morning, like pulling the map out.
Oh no, the best part about the best part about that is like when that happened, like when you were little, is you like open it up and it's a game for a system you don't own, and you're like,
oh no, I've had
that happen before, and then I'm sitting there going like, am I gonna get the system next? And then excitement just builds.
That happened like because one Christmas, my uncle had got me Mean Streets of Sin City and the new Dark Forces, Forces, Jedi Knight, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Which were like, there's no way my computer at the time was going to run them.
Yeah.
And so my dad had to take them back to like CompUSA or something, and I got other games, of course. But so the next year they did the exact same thing, and I was like so disappointed because there was just no way. And then like my dad the next morning had like a new motherboard, a new video card,
new computer parts, to build a system.
He's like, now you've played this game you just got.
Hey. After you spend time putting it together and making it work.
Yes. So anyway, Final Fantasy Legend 1, 2, and 3. I have 3. It's one of my favorite games. I played it not a lot, obviously. I only had a 5-hour play clock on it. I have very fond memories of it.
Yeah.
It's once again the first Saga game, which I did play a lot of. Saga Frontier. Yeah. Which are kind of like Final Fantasy viewed through a carnival mirror, like. Because the guy that made Final Fantasy II is the guy that's in charge of the Saga series.
Okay.
So obviously, if you play Final Fantasy II, you know that the leveling system is really weird and easily breakable. The story is very odd. It's not really a Final Fantasy story in like what we think of a generic Final Fantasy story. But once again, like so they took him off. They were like, Final Fantasy II, like you're done with the Final Fantasy series. We're gonna have you over here doing this thing. And it's just the fact that series has been allowed to grow so weirdly and oddly just makes it so much different. Very, very different. Very cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Like at certain points you like go to kill God and stuff like that. And not in the Final Fantasy version of it's an evil God. No, you're doing it because it's God. You have to save humanity from religion. Very weird.
Well, that's fine.
Very different.
I'm totally okay with that idea. That's cool. Do you have any other ones, or?
Oh no, I thought we would trade off.
Oh, okay. So the first one I'm coming up with, this is like, let's just say, I believe the first time I played this game, I was still running Windows 95 on my desktop. It's a game called Castle of the Winds, and its sequel, Castle of the Winds 2.
Never heard of either of these.
They are not pretty.
Mhm.
They look like they are made entirely in paint.
Oh.
And the story is whatever. You're the savior of the world. Whatever. You're the special one. That's pretty generic. I remember it was one of the first games that I've ever played where on a PC anywhere, where you kind of got to build your character from the get-go. Like you could say, okay, I want a character that's got a ton of strength and very little int and all this and that, and you had little sliders and things like that, and you could choose starting spells and all this, that, and the other, and it was so much fun. And it had randomized dungeons. Well, not randomized, but procedurally generated dungeons.
Before procedurally generated was a term.
Before it was a term, yeah, because you always had a way into it, and you always had a way either to the next level down or to the exit. And I just remember it being really, really fun, and it was kind of like a roguelike, because as soon as you died, you're pretty much hosed unless you just reloaded your save. But me and my siblings would always try to game the system, so we would pick up an unidentified ring, and we would save, and then if you saved and then used something, it wouldn't and you didn't save again, you could reload your save and then be like, okay, this is cursed, I'm gonna put this over here and I'm never gonna do it again. But you had to you had the mechanics of you're now, I believe it had over encumbered, because you had a weight limit of how much you could carry and the stuff you could use, and you could learn, I think you got one basic spell at the beginning, and you could learn any one of the 9 spells in that game. But it depended on if it was a damaging spell or a healing spell, depending on how much whatever. I'm more interested in the mechanics of games versus the story, which is kind of the opposite of Andy. The graphics are kind of hit or miss. If I don't like that, that's fine. But I really like the mechanics of these games, and Castle of the Winds and Castle of the Winds 2 are probably one of the earliest examples that I ever ran into of an RPG that had great mechanics, and the gameplay was fun for what it was in 1995 or 6 or whatever year it was.
So do you know if that's available on Good Old Games?
I don't think you could.
It's definitely there's a site I've been at lately called Abandoned.com that's all abandonware.
Yeah,
it's definitely there.
Probably there,
everything in the world that's ended up there.
I don't know. The last time, because I was over at my sister's house and she loaded it up. I think she had to load up a Windows 3.1 or a Windows 95 emulator to run it in. So I would imagine it's probably not on Good Old Games at the moment. But it might be. I mean, it's a real simple game. It's probably only 10 megs. But, it was really cool. You just start out in the little village, you go to the cave, finish off that, and then you go to the town, and the town has magic items and stuff. And it was really fun. I remember that game just being a lot of fun. And we wasted so much time in just the first area because we couldn't figure out that you had to use the number keys to go down a diagonal hallway.
Interesting.
And I was like, well, crap. Eventually, when we figured that out, the game was totally playable and way more fun. So
good.
Yeah.
It's so weird when you talk about the old the systems. The minute you start talking about that, I immediately thought of remember the Gold Box games? Remember how when we were playing Dungeons and Dragons?
Oh yeah.
SSI was releasing those big volume 8 CD mega sets that were Curse of the Azurbans, Pools of Radiance, Pools of Darkness.
Oh yeah. You could buy the big tray that had 9 discs.
Eye
in
of
it.
Beholder, Eye of Beholder 2, which so that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the not Eye of Beholder because everyone knows that's a great game.
Yeah.
But the Gold Box games. So I want to say in the summer, I want to say I was a freshman in high school. I was at a computer show, and they were selling one of those sets that had all these games in it. And I bought it and brought it home, and I had just installed, I think, 98B, and it wouldn't work under 98B.
You had to,
Windows 98B.
So you had to reinstall Windows 98 or 95.
Well, what my dad and I actually did was we actually found my old computer with the 46100 board in it. We took the 46100 board, we found a CD-ROM driver that would work. We built basically a small DOS box before you called it DOS boxes.
Yeah, because now it's just now you can run everything in an emulator or a virtual box.
So basically we put a small 140 meg hard drive in it or something super small, and I had that in my room.
And that's what you were playing this game on.
Yeah, so during that summer, I'd I was a bag boy at a grocery store. I'd come home and flip that on and basically play all night. You know, typing in things like "Go west, go west, go west, down, down."
Oh,
go
yeah,
west,
yeah.
Go west, go west. And then like okay. And then get into the battle system, which was all AD&D 2nd Edition, which I already knew the rules to, so I understood.
So you just had to figure out like how to game it.
Yeah, but basically like taking your character from the beginning of Pools of Radiance all the way through the whole series, and like at the end of it you have your party and you've basically made in the same way that like, and even Baldur's Gate doesn't do this really well the same way, but like when you play a pen and paper Dungeons and Dragons game, like you build your own story, right?
Yeah, that's what you're doing.
Yeah, the problem with Baldur's Gate is that the story that's there is so well told, you can't really build it yourself. Whereas, like, these gold box games, it's so threadbare.
Oh, yeah. Like, there's not much of a story there to begin with.
The narrative is basically the king brings you to this city, and underneath the city there's this giant dungeon, and you have to clean out the dungeon.
Yeah.
And then you have to go to the next game, the next game, the next game.
Yeah.
And by the time you're done, I'd probably sunk 100 hours into this whole series.
Yeah.
But I had like a very firm
like this
what
is what
my
this
characters
game,
are.
This is
like,
this is this game to me.
This is what this guy is.
Yeah.
You know, my warrior was the gruff warrior, my thief was the sneaky thief, but my mage was this like nobility guy.
Yeah.
Like they all had infighting and everything, and it was really good to like build a narrative over the course of the game, which you just don't get anymore.
And it's your narrative, not
the game's narrative.
The game's narrative.
I mean, the only thing I can think of
you could kind of do that with like Elder Scrolls games, right? Because they
that's
just
what I was
drop
about to
you
say,
off in the middle of nowhere and say, okay, there is this quest that you could go on, or you could just do whatever the hell you want.
That's what I say. Like the only two games, like for people that have never done this before,
Fallout.
Yeah, have never done this before. They've never experienced this type of game. Like the only thing that's close to it now are things oddly enough like Grand Theft Auto, the Elder Scrolls.
Yeah.
I would say even like Demon Souls, like because once again that story is threadbare.
Yeah.
The
Dark Souls are
Dark
Souls is a little bit more structured story.
A structured story, but Demon Souls it's just like go.
Yeah, try not to die a lot, okay?
Yeah, and it's like so. In getting that in that early days before we had
well, you can kind of do that. You can kind of do that with like Ultima too.
Yeah.
Not Ultima 2, but Ultima as well.
Although Ultima 4, which is like the best Ultima, like throws all of your previous progress out the window. It's like new story, new mechanics, go.
Yeah. It was funny.
Might Magic was also one of the ones I would think would be that.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Ultima, like I went over to my sister's house another time, and they were sitting there playing Ultima, and I'm like, so you start out as just like a regular like medieval kind of guy, and then you go to space.
One?
Yeah, the original Ultima 1. It's like, oh yeah, the whole point of the game is to get enough money to go to space, and then you have to take over space too. And I'm like,
well, there were robots in Final Fantasy 1.
Yeah, I guess.
There's that one dungeon in Final Fantasy 1 underneath the waterfall.
There's robots under a waterfall. Wouldn't they rust?
They have that. You have to get that cube from them. The cube lets you go to the Sky Castle.
Got to buy the Tesseract. Okay. Were you done with your?
Oh yeah, no.
Okay.
You
So my second one isn't really a single one. There's this series of games, and I can't remember the names of all of the games specifically, but I believe it's like Averum and Geneforge. They're both run in the same engine, and it's another one of those like old school PC RPGs. It's isometric, and I don't believe the worlds are randomly generated. It's been a very long time. They're on my Steam account, and I just haven't played them in forever. But what you do is you just make your character and go, and the combat is turn-based, which is something that I've always been a real big fan of in RPGs is turn-based, because then you can sit and think about what you're doing. You don't have to like
anyone that plays like Baldur's Gate 1 or 2 with the real-time mode on,
yeah.
I always just like shudder, like I can't.
Yeah, no, you
too
have
many things.
There's too much going on. It's like trying to play Final Fantasy 13.
I can't
where you can only
all of that.
Where you can control all your characters at once. It's not possible.
And they all have like books of skills and stuff.
Yeah. So you would have to have hotkeys and stuff. But I mean, that's what this game was like, and it was. You could set all your characters to AI if you really wanted to. Like your whole party, you could say, okay, all you guys over here go crazy, do what you do, and I'm going to control this one guy. Or you could, put it in, okay, I'm going to take care of everybody's roles and things like that. It was like playing your own D&D campaign. And I remember those games being a lot of fun. And they were really hard.
Oh, yeah.
Like super hard.
The old school computer RPGs are like
not screwing around.
There's basically usually a small tutorial area. It's usually the sewers underneath the inn where you have to go kill rats.
Yeah,
and then the minute you get out of the town, it's
done.
like everything is going to kill you.
Yeah. No.
Good luck. Hope you roll 20s.
Yeah. It was a lot like that. And you know, I don't know. It was always a lot of fun to play. Those were the RPGs that I played forever, right? Like because I was always building PCs once I figured out how to do it. You know, and that was what me and my sister played when we were younger, and that's you know, we would always like. There was no multiplayer, right? Mm-hmm. So the way that you made it multiplayer was, okay, you control these 3 guys, and I control these 3 guys.
These guys are yours, these guys are mine.
And so, you know, don't get my guys killed, okay?
Yes.
Because then when they died, you were just SOL, you had to recruit somebody else. But yeah, like, I believe it, Gene Forge is the one I can definitely remember, where you are just, you know, like they had cat people and lizard people and things like that. And they had
not ringing any bells.
It's forgotten.
Yeah,
like
there we go then.
But it was always a lot of fun, and you always started like as somebody's prisoner or something. Mm-hmm. Like that was always the default way of like, okay, you have no gear, so we're gonna start you with nothing.
That's
so
how every Elder Scrolls game starts.
you're a prisoner or something, and you start with nothing, and then you have to like become this great adventurer that everybody knows. So and they were a lot of fun back in the day. Now, I mean, they look dated as all get out because they're just.
Well, that's the thing. I think more than any other genre of video game, RPGs can look dated.
Well,
there's so much that you can like be like, okay, whatever. Like the graphics are the least important part of the conversation.
Yeah, they are, but that's also great because then it can run on anything.
Yeah.
Like especially these old school PC RPGs, like you can, as long as you know how to get.
Probably run on your phone.
Yeah. Didn't they put Baldur's Gate on?
They put Baldur's Gate on tablets. Yeah.
They put Baldur's Gate on iOS, so that'll run on your phone. It'd be really hard to read though, because iPhones are tiny.
Yeah, that's when you'd have to have a tablet.
Yeah.
So my next one, you mentioned Ultima, and it really sparked a memory in my mind. You talked about your sister and you like multiplayer gaming.
Yeah.
So my dad and I played Ultima Underworld 1 and 2, The Stygian Abyss, and they're both Warren Spector games.
Yeah.
So basically, we would sit there. It was our first game that we kind of bonded over. He would be playing it. He'd come, like, this was before he was, you know, he'd play it. He'd come check in with me, see what I was doing. And Ultima Underworld is, once again, one of those threadbare stories. You're in a city. The mayor says you have to go underneath the city and go through the dungeons beneath the city. But unlike all of the Gold Box games where you're a party, in Underworld, you're just a guy.
Just a dude.
One dude. And it was one of the first games. It uses a variant of the engine that was used in System Shock, which is kind of a Doom era type first-person engine, and it's so fun. And it's just kind of like if you like Demon Souls and Dark Souls 1 and 2, you kind of like that aloneness. I would say Ultima Underworld. Go get that off Good Old Games. I'm sure it's on there. Because they have all the Ultima games on there.
They have a lot of stuff on Good Old Games.
If you can put up with the fact that it's not amazeballs looking, it is great. And it is the same kind of like, in that room there is, you know, a mind flayer. And I have to like be ready to take him on. And like, what strategy, you know, how do I move over, you know, where do I block my shield? And it is great. It is the proto Demon Souls. And I think Ultima as a series as a whole has really been forgotten. Because there's just no way. I think EA doesn't understand how to like revitalize it as a single player franchise.
Like how and EA doesn't.
There's still Ultima Online.
EA of now doesn't really make single player games.
No.
Like
there's
even their single player games have
Kingdoms of Ultima, which is this browser based game, which is like I don't know, you kind of build up your city type game.
Yeah.
But I think if EA got the right team in place to do Ultima Underworld again, I think it would be a really big seller because of games like Demon Souls and Dark Souls. People are ready for this type of game again in a way that we weren't, you know, in 2008.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I'm trying to think of another one.
What, another game?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of another game. But no. I actually, to be fair, I've never actually played an Ultima game straight up.
Oh. Play Ultima 4. If you've never played an Ultima game, play Ultima 4, Quest of the Avatar. It is the quintessential Ultima game. You can get it for free on goodoldgames.com. Your only investment then is your time. It runs really well in modern computers, although it looks like something that was made in 1983.
Because it was.
But it is really good, and the way that it kind of differentiates, like, you're going to be the avatar.
Yeah.
So if you do good things, you can get the good ending. But if you don't do good, if you're killing things and being bad, then you start losing power, basically, and your powers change, your skill set changes.
So it's like the good and evil karma systems that we have in a lot of like open world games, like Infamous. And,
but like done
Fable,
infinitely
like
better.
Well, you know.
Because of like how you kind of affect.
Because back in the day, all you had was mechanics. You didn't have
like
graphics weren't a problem.
Like my first Ultima game was Ultimate Pagan, which I think is 8, maybe, and it was mind blowing at the time for me as a kid. And it's just it's what it is. Like there are tons. If you have older systems, I'm actually surprised now as an adult how many of the games like Ultima 1, 2, 3, and 4 made the jump to Nintendo. Like there's Ultima on Nintendo. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
There's I have Might and Magic 1 and 2 for my Sega Genesis. I didn't know they were out there. There's a Dungeons and Dragons game for the Sega Genesis. Like if you have these older systems, maybe you have a Retron 5 or a Superboy, you can go play these. Like it wasn't all JRPGs on these systems.
No, but those are the ones that got the best press. Like games like Phantasy Star, Final Fantasy, Shining Force. Poor Shining Force.
Poor Phantasy Star, man.
I was watching my sister
play. Sega, please bring back Phantasy Star.
I was watching my sister play Phantasy Star 2 online when I was at work. I had the stream running. PSO2?
Oh, okay.
The MMO. And I was just like, man, why can't they put this on my Vita in this country?
Dear Sega, please.
Dear Sega. Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to think of...
If you can't think of another one, we can just keep going. I want this to kind of be more of a conversation.
I mean, I have... Okay, so it's not really an RPG. It's not like a JRPG, right?
That's fine. It's a JRPG. It doesn't need to be a CRPG. It doesn't need to be an action RPG. It just needs to be an
I would
RPG.
say it's more like a... It's a combat game. It's called Gladiator. It's another really old PC game. I think it came on one of those discs that was like 100 games for $10.
Oh, yeah.
But they were mostly shareware.
Yeah.
Even though you figure out the code, it's free.
So many of those games. Well, my dad and I actually had they sold discs that all they were was shareware code breakers. Yeah. So you would type in the game, like let's say,
and it would tell you whatever the password is to get the retail game.
Yeah, basically, let's say it's Curse of Monkey Island. You would type in Curse of Monkey Island, and instead of having to go to find that card wheel with all the different pirates on it, it would just go and patch the game. So that never did that again. Yeah. That was a godsend. Yeah. Especially since a lot of these games, like when you bought them later, would come with a text file instead of a manual. Yeah. So like,
But so this game is called Gladiator, and what you would do is you'd have an army, and you would choose like 2 or 3 guys out of that army, and you could just play them. And the whole army, like your army was all AI controlled, and they were all trying to kill all the other guys in the army. But as if the guy that you were playing died, you would just jump to another guy in your army. And if he survived, like the longer they survived, the more money you could dump into them to level them up and things like that. It was real simple, and the maps were kind of weird. But I don't know, it was another one of those games that we played a lot of because where we lived, internet was pretty crappy. We were load balancing 2 modems with like 2 AOL accounts signed in on the same system just so that you could have a decent internet. But it was just one of those like silly little RPG-esque games that you would play for a few hours, kind of get your fill up and then come back. But there was not really much of a story to it. It was just, hey, this is a fun little combat game with RPG elements. Yeah. I didn't really get into the big JRPGs until I had a PS1. So the games that I do have.
Well, then let's pull forward then. So my next game, Forgotten, is anything from the Grandia series. Like you can buy Grandia 1 on the PlayStation Network, and it's great. Like Grandia's battle system is one of the best parts of the game. The story is very kind of generic and rote. Yeah. But at the same time, the world, instead of it being like a generic fantasy world or a far future steampunk world like Final Fantasy VII. Is a world that is just coming to grips with exploration across the sea. Yeah. So it's really kind of 1500s era, 14th and 15th century Europe, basically. But the art design is so weird and just different than other RPGs, it kind of balances all this out. Grandia 1 is a great battle system, but Grandia 2's is phenomenal. Grandia 2 you can get, of course, on the Dreamcast. I think there's also a PC version of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome, and it so different than what I was used to at the time when I played it. After playing Final Fantasy VII,
Mm-hmm.
Final Fantasy VIII, kind of going through that stuff, and then playing Grandia. So much brighter, so much more fun.
Yeah.
And the battles play out in pseudo real time for a real way. It's like the actual time battle system where you're just waiting for that bar to fill. You can actually see there's a whole bar at the bottom of the screen. You can actually see your guys marching across it. So when that guy's going to hit me next, if I can...
Yeah, it's similar to, Child of Light. Child of Light has that.
Exactly. You see a lot of... The thing about Grandia now is it doesn't seem as groundbreaking as it did when I first played it.
Yeah.
Because so many games have copied the system off Grandia. The Final Fantasy X's battle system is basically Grandia's battle system. Pull minus a bunch of bells and whistles.
Yeah, because it just shows you who's gonna attack in what order.
So if the big bad guy's coming to attack you, and one of your characters is, going to attack him first, you can actually pause that character so that your next character comes in between them.
Yeah.
He can attack the bad guy, then you can have the first guy that's paused attack the bad guy. So maybe if
you can take the bad guy.
Critical that bad guy at the right time, it'll move him back down the list.
Yeah.
So you can really kind of juggle people really, really nice.
Oh, that's cool.
And the voice work in Grandia is always top notch. Always a really good game. And we're never going to get another Grandia. We got Grandia 3, Grandia 4 on PS2, and we're just never getting another one because that team is never going to be together again. It's Game Arts, which is a lot of the Game Arts people are the same people that made Lunar.
Yeah.
So people that was they should make another Lunar game. If you play Grandia is the next Lunar. So really fun. Once again, never getting another Lunar game, never getting another Grandia game.
Which really bums me out, right? The Lunar series was one of those games, that was...
It just never found its footing. It was never on a system that it could, truly take advantage of.
We just keep getting... I think, rather than... publishers are looking at it going, well... Rather than spending all this money to make a 100% new game, even though they could reuse a lot of the sprites and stuff, they just rehash the old ones and add some new voice work or things like that. And it's because how many times have you bought Lunar? Because you have the Sega CD version.
Yep.
You have the PS1 version of one of them.
Yep.
You have a PSP version.
Yep.
And you have a GBA version.
Yep.
4 times.
Yeah.
4 times. Same game. No real story.
But the problem is okay. So think about Japan, where this game comes from.
Yeah.
As a business standpoint, the Sega CD never really took off
anywhere.
So Lunar 1, we had this really great, critically acclaimed RPG that a lot of people bought the Sega CD for, but a lot of people didn't experience. So then they go, okay, now we have this PlayStation, and the Sega Saturn at the same time. So now we're gonna bring this out for more people, basically an HD remaster, right?
Well, the equivalent of an HD remaster in 1995.
Yeah, the equivalent of an HD remaster. Yeah. Anyway, so then in the Game Boy Advance, when that came out, that was pretty popular on both sides of the pond.
Yeah.
So then they brought out the Game Boy Advance. They're like, okay, we can do this again. Maybe we can get more people involved in Lunar.
Yeah.
The Game Boy Advance version really came out to build up steam for the eventual Game Boy DS version, Nintendo DS version, which is a shitty game. Yeah. That killed Lunar. The problem is...
That's not what...
No. The problem is Lunar, a lot like Grandia, have always been simmering. They never really blew up.
Yeah.
There's a couple of RPGs that did. Star Ocean blew up. Star Ocean on the PS2 was very popular. Xenosaga blew up when Xenogears didn't. Final Fantasy, of course, blew up. Dragon Quest, of course, blew up. But a lot of them have to simmer just kind of right below that threshold of it's popular enough to give us a sequel, but it's not you can't bankroll it. Yeah. So the problem became when the DS version came out.
Yeah.
Not the DS version, the new game. Technically, Lunar 3 came out and killed it. They were like, okay, Game Arts was like, we can't do this again. It's not making enough money.
Yeah.
We're not a giant studio.
Wait, have you played the DS version?
Mm-hmm.
Is it really mechanically bad?
Yes.
Okay.
And the story's horrible. And the voice work is abysmal.
Well,
there is a voice work.
I was gonna say, I didn't really like Null in the reworked null for the what is it, the
PS1?
PSP version.
Yeah.
Because it's different voice act. Well, yeah, it's different voice actors for the PSP
because those people don't
version.
sound the same anymore.
Well, no, but I mean, even the guy that played Alex didn't sound the same because it was the same kid from when he did the Sega CD stuff, and then they brought him back like a decade later. Well, of course, he's 10 years older and he's no longer 8.
Yeah.
But it worked out just fine.
Yeah.
It was just like
the problem becomes is that so at a certain point you want to redo the translation because we're actually translations have gotten better.
Yeah.
So that means we have to redo the voice work. We actually can't hire those people again because now it's 20 years later.
Yeah. Now they're like the girl who sang can't sing as well or whatever.
Game Arts put out the PSP version in Japan. They brought it over. I think Axis brought it over.
Somebody brought it over.
Exy brought it over here, and so it was really popular. The problem was once again it wasn't popular enough for us to go ahead and do Eternal Blue.
Yeah.
Which Eternal Blue is the best Lunar game.
Yeah.
And then even then it wasn't popular enough for us to do another Lunar game. To like
even though they did it,
program a new engine, do all this stuff, you know. So Lunar, Grandia, I would add Saga to that, are kind of Japanese RPGs that have been forgotten.
Yeah,
gone by the wayside.
I think most of mine were made in the U.S.
Well,
I mean they were small developers, probably a single guy working on them, but you know,
well, in the early days, early days that was doable.
Well, yeah, well, and it still is kind of doable, like.
You know, the team that made Ease, I found out, Ease 1 and 2, was like 8 people. And like 3 of those were musicians.
There's pretty good music in those first couple of games, though.
Ease is another good example of a game that's like constantly simmering below the surface.
I mean,
of super popular.
That one just came out for
Memories of Celestia.
Yeah, the one that came out on the Vita.
Did you get that on?
I have the card, yeah.
I need to borrow that at some point.
I don't have the box, but you can borrow the card. It's in my case.
Okay, good. Anyway.
Yeah, that's fine.
So there's tons of these. Like if you're an RPG fan, especially we're going into fall. Fall's always the time. I always want to play D&D in fall. I always want to play RPGs in fall.
Yeah, well, it's currently we still have like a month left of summer.
Well, yeah, but leaves are gonna start turning. Kids are going back to school.
That's because they're getting too hot.
It's fall in air quotes, not the season. The time, the idea.
The idea.
You know, the pumpkin spice latte is going to come back here in a couple weeks.
And Andy's going to be hyped up on coffee forever.
Yeah, they gave me a different pain medication, so they might be able to. I might be able.
You might be able to have caffeine again. Oh man. Well, you can always get decaf.
In the comments, please, if you know an RPG you want us to play,
that we
should play, I think it's amazing.
Yep.
Please let us know. And keep on rolling.
Yep. See you guys later.